Hello, ho, ho, everyone.
Welcome back to the Kaijusaurus Podcast. It's been a wee while since you heard us. We took a wee break.
A winter sojourn.
Exactly, yeah.
Hiatus.
A hiatus, exactly.
A pause.
And in that pause time that you haven't heard our lovely voices, it's been a bit of a turbulent time for
the
world.
For you.
Next episode, this fucking month's episode.
This month's.
The Return of Godzilla, which we just watched.
Which we did watch. That was a very good. That was a very, very good transition. But before that, Stephen, how was your break?
Gosh,
it was so long.
I would love to say I've been up to lots, but I haven't.
But yeah,
particularly.
We've been locked in Kaijusaurus Towers.
Yeah.
Just watching this film really slowly, once in a week.
Well, since we last recorded, I've watched every Planet of the Apes movie for the first time, and I enjoyed most of them.
What was the best one?
The original.
The original. Yeah. I've seen the original one as well with Charlton Heston.
Yeah.
Did you watch the remakes as well?
The new series.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. To get us back into the conversational swing of things, since I've been away for a wee bit, I'm gonna just let's go.
You know what it was? I fled away in embarrassment and shame because of my so-so quiz results. Actually, no, I stand by. I was proud of that result.
Well, you've been back in America.
Well, yeah, that's right. I was in the States.
What did you witness and experience during your time at the States?
I was there on a very special, very important day for a lot of people. November the 8th. It was... What happened? What it was...
Gosh.
Well, I'll tell you what, I had a really, really good Chipotle. Like, honestly. I'll always remember that day because I went to Chipotle and I thoroughly enjoyed myself.
So at least one good thing happened.
Yeah, that's it. At least that was it. I don't remember it. I don't recall anything else happening that day. My Chipotle was great.
That Chipotle trumped all others you had.
Yeah, it really did.
Sorry.
But no, we're here. We're here to share. We're here to share the Christmas spirit, the Christmas love, and we have just watched
Return of Godzilla. But like I say, to get us back into the conversational, because we're getting a bit rusty here.
Yeah, we are.
I'm just going to ask you an icebreaker question.
Oh, please do.
What's your favourite Abba song?
My favourite Abba song. Knowing me, knowing you. Aha, there is nothing we can do.
That's a decent one.
What's yours, Stephen?
It's got to be SOS.
I agree.
See if
it's a good song.
Well, clearly you don't, because you just said your favourite song.
I know, but I agree that it's good.
If anyone tells me that SOS isn't their favourite ABBA song, or at least isn't in their top 5, get real.
Send us your top 5 ABBA songs.
Get real.
Get real. Are you going to ABBACon? Well, I see you at ABBACon.
Aren't ABBA getting back together?
They are getting together for it was really vague, but some sort of I'm going to do my Bjorn impression. Yeah, we are very much looking forward to the new technologies. Basically, they are keen to do the 3D hyper virtual reality headset kind of performances. Sure. I'm not sure if that means that they're getting together and recording new music, or if they're doing some sort of green screen live in 3D virtual concert
either way,
Tupac and the Gorillaz did.
It'll be absolutely fabulous.
It will.
Anyway,
can we get instead of Godzilla music? Can we just have ABBA tracks for this podcast? Did ABBA do any Christmas songs?
Yeah, they did Thingy. Oh wait, no, that's Happy New Year. That's a New Year song.
We'll find out if ABBA did any Christmas songs. Can we leave the podcast with one of those?
Well, I think all ABBA music sounds like Christmas music to me. I don't know why, but it just does.
I get it. It's fairly wintry. I don't know. There's a seasonal quality to it, except there's a few that feel very summery to me. Thank you for the music. Take a chance on me. And you know what? These are all the songs that they sing in Mamma Mia, and that's set in the summer, so that's probably just what that's. That's probably.
You have Pierce Brosnan singing in Mamma Mia.
Mm-hmm. Happy days, I'm so hard to find. Stellan Skarsgård. What's the murderer in the fucking
girl with the dragon
tattoo singing in a musical
ABBA songs
with fucking Julie Walters? They fancy Stellan Skarsgård. They're gonna keep singing. Dominic Cuckoo.
Shall we
begin?
As much as I love to talk ABBA.
I know, ABBA chats. This is the ABBAcast. Welcome everyone to the ABBAcast, in which myself, Roz Menzies, an ABBA fan of 15 years, listens to and reviews every single ABBA A-side and B-side with my good friend and ABBA newbie, Steven Sloss. Welcome. Okay, so today we're on ABBA Gold.
It's funny because as we record this, I'm actually looking at a fucking
Abba Gold.
Abba Gold on vinyl.
Abba Gold is... If you haven't listened to any Abba, go and just listen to all of Abba Gold. There's like 40 tracks in it, right?
And they're all gold.
They're all fucking brilliant. Like, every single one of them is good. Anyway...
This is the Kaijusaurus Podcast, the podcast in which myself, Steven Sloss, a lifelong fan of Kaiju films, watches and reviews all 30 plus films in the Godzilla canon with my good friend Roz Menzies, who's a newbie, but not really a newbie by this point, but anyway, he's still seeing all the films for the first time. Today, we have reviewing 1984's The Return of Godzilla, directed by Koji Hashimoto, the first film in what is known as the Heisei series, which ran from 1984 to 1995. Reboot of the series, ignoring all previous films bar the original, and it's quite the fresh start.
It is.
After you.
Okay, well, I was going to say, so we are back. It has been, 9 years?
9 years. Yeah.
It feels good to be back.
Uh-huh.
It was nice to have a bit of almost a refresher. It was nice to dive back in. So tell me what led to this 9-year break. Why is this film here? Why now? Why 1984?
Well, in the early 80s, Toho signed an exclusive a deal with Disney to be the exclusive Japanese distributor for all Disney films, live action,
juicy contract.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, 80s Disney.
Yeah.
Well,
Borrowers Down Under.
Rescuers
Down
Under. Disney's only theatrical sequel. No, wait, The Jungle Book 2 went theatrical, but that was like fucking ages later. That was like 30 years later or something.
At the time. Anyway, carry on. Lucrative Disney. They're raking in the Disney bucks.
This is the direct-to-DVD Disney sequels cast.
Yes, in which...
Would you prefer Lion King 2, Simba's Pride, or Aladdin 2, The Return of Jafar?
Which one of the Lion Kings is Romeo and Juliet? Is it the third one?
That's the second one,
That's
Simba's
the second
Pride.
one, Simba's Pride. But aren't they like cousins?
No, it's Scar's son and Simba's daughter.
Right, okay.
I think. I've not seen it in years.
But were Scar and Thingy not brothers?
Oh, wait, shit. Oh, mate.
It's weird. I don't like it. It's weird. I don't like it.
Is it Scar's son? Well,
no. I don't know.
We're not here to discuss this anyway. It's not like us.
Let us know. Is it Scar's son?
It's not like us to go on tangents.
I know, it's not.
Anyway, Toho signs a deal with Disney to be the exclusive Japanese distributor for Disney media and content. So this leads to Toho doing some festival showings. For Toho's 30th anniversary in 1982, I think they re-released a lot of their older movies, a lot of Kurosawa, released a lot of Disney stuff, and re-released some Godzilla. And they found that the older Godzilla movies being re-released were attracting bigger audiences than even the Kurosawa stuff, and was managing to level with the Disney releases.
Right.
So Tomoyuki Tanaka, a long-time series producer, was like, okay, well, maybe there's something here, okay. There was also several Godzilla official fan groups, that sort of thing, and there was a petition that got about 40,000 signatures. I think it was called the Godzilla Resurrection Committee, and demanding a new Godzilla film. So all these factors aligned in the stars, and a new Godzilla movie was put into production.
1984.
Yeah. Tomoyuki Tanaka originally asked Ishiro Honda back to direct, but Honda declined, saying that he felt the series should have ended after the death of Eiji Tsuburaya. Akira Ifukube, music composer, also declined because he objected to Godzilla's increased size in this movie, saying, I don't write music for 80-meter tall monsters.
That's amazing.
But he would later redact that, but we'll get there.
We'll get there. So,
The Return of Godzilla. This is a super interesting movie, and it's one of my favourites, definitely. Funnily enough, there's three major versions of this movie. There's a Japanese original. There is a straight English dub done by Toho.
Yeah.
And then there's the American version, Godzilla 1985.
Is that the name of the film?
Yes.
Okay.
And as we discussed previously on the Kaijusaurus Podcast.
So, yes, Embassy Pictures picks up Godzilla, and So not only did they trim it down, remove a lot of the nuclear stuff, they also rearranged scenes all over the place and added in new scenes.
With who?
With popular American TV detective Raymond Burr. TV's Raymond Burr from TV's Ironside and TV's Perry Mason. 30 years later was edited into another film.
Excellent.
And you will see this film.
Yeah.
He was edited into this film again 30 years later. The intentions of the producers of this edit in the 80s was to make it a comedy along the lines of Woody Allen's What's Up Tiger Lily, like take a Japanese film, strip it down, put comedy scenes in it with American actors, and Raymond Burr said no. If I'm doing it, Godzilla's serious, and it has to be anti-nuclear.
Well, that's good.
So
that's really good.
Good man, Raymond.
Good man, Raymond.
Yeah.
So yeah, Raymond Burr, who was edited into the American version of the original Godzilla movie back in 1956, was drafted back in and was re-edited into the Return of Godzilla for its US release, and it was titled Godzilla 1985. But they originally intended to make it a comedy along the lines of the Woody Allen movie What's Up Tiger Lily.
Yeah, where like...
But Raymond Burr said no.
He didn't want to mess with it.
Yeah, Godzilla's serious. I'll do it if it's a serious anti-nuclear film. And it's not as serious in tone as the original feature as the Japanese version.
It could have been worse.
Yeah, it remains fairly serious. And
thank goodness.
Big ups Raymond.
Cheers, Raymond.
Yeah.
Cheers, Ray.
So, and I actually, and this film was actually kind of long unseen for American fans because it was released on DVD and Blu-ray earlier this year by Kraken Releasing. And it was a cracking release. It wasn't really, it was alright.
It was pretty good.
It was okay.
That's who we watch.
Yeah, we watched that. And before that, there was no DVD or Blu-ray release in America at all. And only Godzilla 1985 was on video, and it's never been reproduced on DVD or anything. So it was kind of long unseen in the US.
So when did you first see...
Well, thankfully, I'm no in the US.
That's it. You got connections.
I grew up with the English language version, but just the straight dub of the Japanese version.
Okay,
uncut.
That's reasonable.
And what I would find out much later is that this international dub, as it's called, is massively unseen within the English fandom.
Wow.
And English language fandom.
You just fucking had it.
It's so strange to me because it was released on UK VHS and it's just the version I grew up with.
Right, yeah. So
like,
you had
again,
kind of ready access
while we're
to
watching it today, I just heard lines from it in my head. And so many American fans are just hearing this dub for the first time this year because it's included on this Blu-ray release. Whereas I'm just kind of sitting here like, been there.
10 years ago, mate.
Fucking ages ago, pals. So... The Return of Godzilla. I really, really fucking enjoyed this movie. Yeah. Got to talk about. How did you feel about this movie?
I really liked it too. I love it as an entrance into this new generation of Godzilla movies, or this new era. It feels quite fitting to have the first film of this new era essentially be a continuation of the first one. Like an attempt to go back to that same style a little bit, really look at the anti-nuclear themes again, kind of touch on some of the same stuff that the first film touched on, and that doesn't mean to retread it or to like just rehash it out again.
Sure.
But it's interesting because this is 1984. The first Godzilla film came out in
1954.
54. So that's like
that's 30 years.
30 years. 30 years. And it's nice to see it's almost the same situation, but in a very different Tokyo, in a very different Japan. And it knows it's kind of aware that is doing that. It is revisiting the original story of it and almost updating it. I wouldn't call it strictly a reboot. It's a direct continuation.
Yeah, it's not an out-and-out remake of the original, but it treads very similar lines. And what's interesting is
it's an attempt to freshen it up.
It's a new Tokyo, it's a new Japan. It's also a very different global environment. Whereas the first Godzilla was very much a post-war recovery movie almost. This is a Cold War movie
absolutely.
Because you previously talked about how Destroy All Monsters was something of a Cold War movie, but that was very much like a 1960s Cold War movie. This is intense. This is like Hunt for Red October Cold War shit, and that's one of the many things I love about this movie. But do you have any opening remarks?
Opening salvos. Well, Let's see. Well, just first of all, it's just really nice to see, to think back on that first Godzilla and all the Godzillas I've seen since. We're now in modern Japan. My favourite thing about this movie was so much about how much they actually, or at least maybe I'm wrong, but they seem to actually use a lot of, a little bit of location shooting in Tokyo or in a city. Maybe it wasn't Tokyo, but a lot of just nice big wide shots of Tokyo, and all those shots. I know the ones with obviously the monsters in them are special effects shots or miniature shots, but they use a lot of really nice big Tokyo, fucking big bright screens in the beginning of that sort of thing that, you know, I would obviously associate like inner Tokyo with bright, beautiful screens and advertising everywhere and stuff. It's nice to see the Godzilla, you know, the Tokyo and the Japan I've been watching for fucking 30 years on all these films become a lot more familiar to me after this 9-year jump. And
because we're having a nearly decade jump, the contrast between the Tokyo of the 70s where we left it and the Tokyo of the mid 80s is stark.
Yeah.
Suddenly there's huge high-rise skyscrapers that actually tower over Godzilla.
yeah, exactly. Godzilla's not the tallest thing in view.
Yeah.
And you were saying that Godzilla in this is much taller.
He's 30 meters taller roughly. He was 50 meters. Now he's 80 meters, and that was to compensate for the fact that Tokyo is getting bigger.
Yeah.
Literally is getting
it just
taller.
wouldn't be the same.
Yeah.
I mean, well, that's the key thing of this movie, I guess, is what they do with Godzilla. He's out and out almost villainous. He's out and out the antagonist.
Yeah.
Even
Very
in
much the way he was in the original.
Even in the first one, there's a lot more talk of Godzilla as like a bit of nature, as a biological creature. That's still there in Godzilla Returns.
The Return of Godzilla.
The Return of Godzilla. But even then, he's just almost like just this creature on a warpath. He's much bigger. The costume is the best I've seen it. It's threatening.
So good.
Huge. He's got. We're holding your model right here. He's got big, thick thighs and big, strong arms. And vicious expression. His eyes were fantastic. Like the eye work in that. Yeah.
Dead, like fucking
huge. It's the heavy forehead, the heavy eyebrows,
heavy onto eyebrows,
and the way that he sort of like does that look down but stare up. Like there's so many great reaction shots of Godzilla just looking pissed off. But yeah, just generally this movie was great for me. We see political repercussions of Godzilla. We see that on a much wider scale. It was nice to see it go back to politics.
Definitely.
It was nice to see them go back to how does Tokyo deal with a crisis? How does Japan deal with this national disaster? A lot of, you can talk about commentaries about natural disasters and evacuation procedures and things like that. We'll obviously probably touch on it in much more detail, but Japan and international relations, particularly Japan and its relationship to the US and its relationship to Russia, even touches on, of course, the USA and USSR appear in the film, so it does directly touch on the Cold War. So much on that level. All the other shit that I love from the original Godzilla, which is just showing us almost, not exactly in real time, but showing us the disaster unfolding from the initial realization, each step along the way to the military and the defense forces sort of coalescing, to the information spreading, to new ideas being brought on, and then once Godzilla hits, to the chaos, the evacuation, giving us snippets of characters and pieces. And a few, I'm a sucker for throwing me a scene to bite of just a little character doing something else. So, a really strong movie. I really, really liked it.
Excellent. Well, that's a good opportunity to just quickly do a little synopsis.
Recap.
Long story short, 30 years after his original rampage and demise in Tokyo Bay, Godzilla is back.
He's seen by a ship.
He's seen by a ship which mysteriously vanishes, and the crew are all killed mysteriously. We're not explicitly told if this is a new or different Godzilla than first appeared in the 50s, or if it's the original somehow reformed from the oxygen destroyer, or I think it's a new Godzilla. I see it as certainly like a new member of the same species.
Yeah, and you want that first Godzilla destroyed because
That's one of my things about the Godzilla series is that I always think the original Godzilla should stay dead.
Yeah.
Like to use a term that's thrown around in the modern run of Doctor Who quite a lot, it's a fixed point. The death of the original Godzilla at the hands of Dr. Serizawa, to me, is a fixed point.
But what this film presupposes is maybe he didn't die.
So, yeah, I think it's a new Godzilla. So basically, Godzilla re-emerges in modern Japan, but it's a very different world he emerges into. There's Cold War tensions, and because of this, the Prime Minister of Japan faces extreme pressure from both the US and the Soviet Union, who finally actually managed to fucking agree on something, and it's to nuke Japan.
Classic.
We'll get there, because that's a fucking great scene.
All that stuff is juicy.
Meanwhile, the reporter Goro Maki is liaising with Dr. Hayashida, who lost his parents 30 years ago at the hands of Godzilla, and they are researching a way to not defeat, but lure him away.
Yeah.
That's the long and short of it, but the Japanese government has a new super secret super weapon.
Weapon X.
Super X.
Super X, pardon me.
The Flying Fortress, which I love the Super X. It's just this,
Super X is great.
It's a little half baked, but I love the Super X. It's just there.
Yeah, man, it's so much fun.
So yeah, eventually Godzilla is lured away not by the Super X, but by Dr. Hayashida's research into homing instincts, and he is trapped inside Mount Mihara. That's the long and short of it. We'll expand.
Oh yeah, as we
go
along.
But what I want to talk about first is, to me, the first standout sequence in the movie, which is Goro Maki, the reporter, coming across the deserted, not quite wreck, but of the boat, the Yahata Maru, which is the boat that's lost at sea at the start of the movie. It's a very what's the name of the ship? The Queen Mary Celeste.
You're asking the wrong
the Mary
man.
Celeste.
You're asking the wrong guy. Did you see the last podcast?
No. I mean, what's that very famous?
Oh right.
boat?
Oh yeah.
Is it the Mary Celeste?
Yeah, it sounds right.
Yeah,
Something
I
like
think
that.
it's like Anyway, it's abandoned derelict boat, and Goro Maki just happens to drift across it. So he goes on the boat and he finds obvious signs of a struggle, and he finds several mutilated corpses in what is easily by far the most visceral and horror-filled sequence in a Godzilla movie so far.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Because what that sequence reminds me of so much is in John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yeah, man, I had that written down.
Did you really? Oh, good. When MacReady and Doc head to the ruins of a Norwegian base at the start of the movie, and they just go in amongst it and find it's destroyed, it's derelict, there's bodies everywhere, there's signs of a struggle, but they don't quite know what's happened. And that's what happens with Goro in this scene. He goes through the wreck of the ship, there's bodies everywhere, there's obviously been a fight, there's like blood and other unidentified gross substances everywhere, and the overt horror tone there really works, because it is unsettling. And like I said to you, when he spins around the chair and it's just this mutilated, sort of mummified, drained corpse, I shat myself as a kid at that. I was like,
yeah, no, I mean it's a lot.
Yeah.
But no, that whole sequence is great, because in the past I've talked about how much I like shorthand in some of the Godzilla movies, about how we can almost launch the film, cut to the ship blowing up, cut to something else. I like, again, we've taken a breather.
Yeah. This film takes it slowly.
It takes it slowly. It sort of bathes in this really tense, it's almost page out of a horror film. Like, when did The Thing come out? Was this before
The Thing? Was 82. So I think that's almost...
Yeah,
I would be
a lot of these modern horror films are coming out now.
I'd be happy to say that's definitely an influence.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because like this is a 1980s Godzilla with something of a darker edge than what had been seen, and this is coming from a cultural climate that has that enjoyed that sort of thing, that enjoyed taking older sci-fi and horror properties and rebooting them in much darker forms. The Thing, remake of the 1951 movie The Thing from Another World, but the Carpenter 80s version is much darker, obviously, and much more horror filled. Alien, you could even make the argument that Alien is sort of a revamp of 50s horror sci-fi movies, but again with an extremely dark edge.
Uh-huh.
Things like the Terminator, and even King Kong, even though his reboot was in 1976, it was a lot. I don't know, it wasn't darker, but it was a lot more modern and brought up to date.
Yeah.
And
Maybe realism.
so so the Return of Godzilla certainly to me lives within this climate of updating older sci-fi horror properties with something of a darker edge. And that's most evident in this scene, because when I first saw it, even as a kid, I thought, okay, first thing that struck me about that scene was, this isn't Godzilla. Like, this is not the signs of Godzilla's destruction. This is not, like, directly his doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, killing off crew members of a ship, and first of all, leaving the ship itself intact. That's not Godzilla's thing. And what we discover later, which is a very interesting development to me, is that it's actually the work of giant parasites, giant sea
Yeah, that have been like sucking Godzilla's blood in his nebula.
And these lice, whatever, have been mutated and made relatively giant. By feeding on Godzilla, and that's an interesting subject.
It is. I was expecting there to be more of that, but I almost like that.
It's just a thing.
We didn't use there's lots of other little creatures that are like, we just needed Godzilla in this movie, but it works because it's almost like an accident. Godzilla had actually nothing to do with that book.
Yeah.
It's just an almost a strange coincidence.
The boat was there at the wrong time. In the wrong place.
And all
wrong
this
time,
nuclear stuff and all these mutations are getting dug up again because Godzilla is returning. It's coming up to the surface again.
Absolutely. What you said about shorthand, though, in previous films, that's something we've discussed a lot in previous episodes.
Yeah.
And like you said with this film almost does the exact opposite. We see almost everything the characters do at every stage of their actions. For example, we see when Goro is said... When Goro's editor says, go and see Professor Hayashida, we see Goro driving in his car, we see him going into the Institute building, we see him looking for the right door, we see him looking at the door, we see him going in the door, then we see him going to talk to Professor Hayashida. And probably if it was a film made in the 60s, we would see, go and see Professor Hayashida, cut to Hayashida Research Institute, so Professor Hayashida. Whereas in this, we're taking it very ponderously, kind of deliberately, slowly, and it works for this movie, I think. I do think it works.
No, I think so. I like the human characters a lot. Again, I don't necessarily... There's not a hugely strong human plot.
That's true,
they're not trying to do a lot on their own. They're simply sort of discovering the information. They're kind of, as characters are, it's a very serious situation. Their focus is entirely on the Godzilla situation at hand, and you spend such a long time with them that I find them great characters just because of the amount of time, how long we spend going down these corridors and going from A to B and C to D and meeting all these people.
It's funny because the lead character, the reporter, is called Goro Maki. Goro Maki is also the name of the lead character, the reporter in Son of Godzilla.
Oh yeah.
Which is fun. And a character called Goro Maki is a very important figure in Shin Godzilla.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
We'll
talk about fun. Shin Godzilla
the name
a little
keeps
bit
coming up.
You have a very unprofessional. Was that me? Obviously, we're talking about Shin Godzilla because make your announcements.
Because I've seen it now.
Steven saw it. But we'll talk about that near the end, I think.
Talking about the characters in Return of Godzilla, to me, and we said this a few times throughout, and I'm certain you agree with me, the standout human character in this movie is the Prime Minister.
Oh yeah.
The Japanese Prime Minister in this movie.
When I talk about the human characters, I'm specifically talking about the main group that we spend. The three of the photographer Goromaki,
Professor Hayashida, Okamura,
and Noko.
And
but just before we get onto the Prime Minister, just before we get onto the sort of political situation, spending all the time with those characters, it's interesting because past a certain point in the movie, once almost the decision making and the discovery of information is given to the Prime Minister, to the cabinet, and it becomes a much more larger scale about the defense of Tokyo. And once this plan to lure Godzilla into the mountain kind of is already in place, it's interesting because almost all momentum for the human character stops dead, and they spend about 35 minutes of the movie trapped inside a corridor.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And it's still engaging.
And that is
the buck's passed.
It is a little weakness in the movie because you're right. At a certain point, the political side of the human plot becomes so much more interesting.
I don't even mind it, to be honest. I kind of like it in a weird way because it's that very it's probably what would happen in a disaster.
Yeah,
you're in
well,
a huge
exactly,
apartment building. You're trapped in it. It happens to so many people.
Well, yeah,
in
again, this
situations like
feels
that.
very much like a disaster movie. But yeah, the Prime Minister is such a good character, and like, you know, the sequence where he's talking to the Russian and American diplomats, and they're urging him to use nuclear weapons, and we cut in the middle of that to him addressing his cabinet and asking them for their opinions, and one military man stands up and says, both the US and America have had ample opportunity to use nuclear weapons, but they haven't. But they want to use it now. So are you saying they're using us as guinea pigs? Yes. Mm-hmm. And when the Prime Minister goes back into his meeting with the US and Russian ambassadors, he reiterates Japan's 3 non-nuclear principles. They will not produce, use, or introduce nuclear weaponry. And it's such a good scene. It's so on the nose, but it needs to be.
Well, no,
It should be.
it's great because it is just the movie itself discussing nuclear weapons. It's been 30 years. It's almost examining the attitude. Has that attitude since the 1950s changed? What in the modern world could change it? You know, the influence of the sort of nuclear arms race of the States and Russia.
Yeah.
You know, that's a temptation there. That's an influence. But it's interesting to see there is discussion about the pros, the cons.
And it's obviously interesting, like I said earlier, that the only thing the US and Soviets can agree on is to nuclear bomb another country.
Yeah, exactly. Like, because it's not their land, it's not their area.
Yeah.
The Prime Minister sort of standing up to, if you will, like the States and the USSR
is
great.
good.
Because the way that scene's shot, he's sat in the middle, Russia's to one side with a minging bearded guy who looks like a stereotypical Russian, and the guy from the States waving his arms around.
This is no time to be discussing principles.
It's that very, and the way that it's shot, you see him almost, he turns his cheek, we're filming him just like by the ear, just over the shoulder there, hearing out one side, turning to the other, hearing over the other, going back and forth, but it's right in the middle. Japan's sort of stuck between these two forces.
Yeah, exactly.
Compared to them, both relatively smaller.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah,
there's that element of, being told what to do, the States kind of having that,
ruining their political relationships with other countries.
Yeah,
and when the US ambassador says that line, "This is no time to be discussing principles," the Prime Minister replies with something, paraphrasing here, but this is the time to discuss principles because lives are at stake.
Yeah,
the country is at stake,
and it's nice to see. So it's nice, essentially, with the Prime Minister, with Japan sort of running itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Doing what's best for its people and sticking by its own principles.
Exactly.
What's
interesting in Godzilla 1985, the American re-edit, is that obviously in the movie as we watched it, there's a Russian. A Russian military individual is rushing to deactivate a nuclear weapon, which has been on standby in case they choose to use nuclear weapons against Godzilla. So he's rushing to deactivate it, but he doesn't succeed because he's killed before he can get there. In the re-edit, in the American version, they edit it so that he is rushing to activate it.
Of course they do.
He's rushing all over the place.
He's rushing all over the place.
But yeah, that's... like, way to miss the point of the movie.
Yeah, exactly. But, carrying on from just talking about the Prime Minister and that cabinet scene where they discuss the benefits and drawbacks of inviting nuclear weapon use, my favourite thing about that scene, it ends with a big wide shot of the square table, the cabinet office. Prime Minister stands up, he's in the centre, and his cabinet are surrounding him, but very far spread out. All around this table, and it's almost like the inverse of my favourite classic Honda shot where the one character stands or sits and all the characters are crowded around them looking at one thing. It is the opposite of that. One character's in the middle and all the characters are sort of still almost symmetrical but spread all far apart. I enjoyed it. Yeah, I really like that shot. It did just harken back to something like that for me.
And the Prime Minister is such a good character because he never once panics. He's always calm and collected, and like what I like about it is that he's clearly an excellent leader, because while there are people within his cabinet who have differing opinions, there's no actual dissenters. There's no one who betrays him.
Attempts to...
Or
if this was a bit more of a... I don't know the right word, but this was a hookier Godzilla film, or like one that's a bit more high dramatic stakes, you would probably have like, oh, one of my cabinet ministers got a gun, he's threatening to leave, like, or trying to co-opt my authority. But again, there's this intention to try and go as realistic as possible.
This movie does feel very grounded. Very grounded.
And the Prime Minister's nice, because the second he says, at the very beginning, he's like, oh, I hoped that there would nothing, I
hope to end my term in peace.
Which is fun. Of course he doesn't get to do that. But at the end of that movie, with he's standing outside the Parliament building, if I'm right. And
he's inside the sort of war room, I guess you can call it. Yeah, and he's watching Godzilla fall into Mount Mihara on the giant screen
with his guys behind him.
But he is in front of them all.
Yeah,
as he always has. He's been leading them the whole time.
And it's fun to see, sort of just like I enjoy thinking about like what this Prime Minister's reputation would be afterwards, like. For guiding his country out of that crisis.
Oh yeah, that's how I think it would be. Yeah, he'd be seen as a great leader for having successfully he okayed Hayashida's plan, which worked,
and stood up to the States and Russia. And
jumped the gun on avoided nuclear conflict
use again. Yeah,
specifically asked America to shoot down the Russians' missile that was aimed over the Shinjuku area of Tokyo. What do you think of the super secret weapon, the Super X?
Super X is great. It was very interesting. It's a fun little... It looks great. The sequences near the end of the movie where that is just firing at Godzilla, and he's firing back, and it's just a firefight, and the smoke's billowing. Great. The Weapon X is really cool. I don't really know if I don't really know if there's an intention to be made with it. Japan has some cool stuff to use. But it's perfect way of attacking. The way that it pesters and attacks Godzilla is so good, because they wait for him to open his mouth and then fire cadmium rockets into his gullet.
I like the Super X, but I think it's slightly underdeveloped. Like they just kind of bring it up earlier and say, oh, we've got this thing called the Super X.
Yeah, I thought it was like a gun or something like mounted rocket. Cool. Yeah. But it's a big like 4-man.
And then maybe about half an hour later, they say, what about Super X? We've just launched it. And my only other problem with Super X is that maybe we don't need to, but we don't know the pilots.
Yeah.
So I don't feel anything terribly
much about them
at stake when I see them fail. But it is still very powerful when they're forced to land and Godzilla just topples a skyscraper on the Super X, probably destroying it and the crew inside.
Oh, totally. Shall we talk about the just general Godzilla fighting, the rampage,
Let's do it.
Damage?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
So we've talked about the costume. Mm-hmm. Do you have anything to tell me about the costume?
It was Godzilla in this film was portrayed by Kenpachiro Satsuma, who previously played Hedra and Gigan. The costume was not built for him specifically. It was built for another suit performer who had to drop out, so he had to step in, and he had a terrible time doing it because it wasn't built for his body.
I've got really cute sneezes. Carry on. So
he had a bad time performing Godzilla in this movie.
Shame. Yeah, in a big sweaty hollow suit, lots of space. Ooh, I'm thinking about it. I'm shaking. How disgusting that suit must be, especially one that doesn't fit you right.
Yeah, exactly. What about you? What's your? How do you feel about Godzilla in this movie?
I really like it. Again, we have different Godzillas for different movies. This was maybe the most antagonistic Godzilla I've seen. Not probably. In terms of like, you don't get a lot of Godzilla as a character, but I feel like it falls much more into the category of Godzilla being a thinking, feeling creature than like Godzilla, the chaotic creature of nature.
Yeah.
And again, I don't have much evidence to support that, because Godzilla doesn't make that many decisions. They imply like there's a bit of he will follow nuclear way, he wants to consume the nuclear thing. But it's less of a reckoning of Godzilla as this like force of nature, and it is more just a general disaster.
Yeah,
it could be anything essentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the Godzilla that we have is vicious, is much bigger. You were saying the costume is amazing, and the way that he rampages through the town actually is a bit more like a huge creature. It's a bit more King Kongish.
Oh yeah,
You get
sure.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Picking up the train, looking at the train.
Yeah.
It makes sense to me that that's the continuation of the first Godzilla.
People in buildings. And,
And a bit more of involvement in that, which I like a lot. And some really vicious kills from that Godzilla, like picking up the train and just dropping it. Just dropping it.
And the scene where he first comes ashore in Tokyo Bay, and there's a huge military presence there just to fend him off, and he obliterates it all with one quick fell swoop of his atomic breath, and there's just that deadly silent brief shot of Godzilla just standing looking at the decimated military, and it's silent. There's no sound or music or anything. And it's just a case of oh fuck.
Exactly. But so Godzilla doesn't do too much. Godzilla's here to fight and kill and get nuclear energy and gets thrown in a big volcano.
And he does it,
but I actually really like this Godzilla. It's one of the kind of stronger. It's the most menacing. It's the most threatening. He has those eyes, and he actually add a lot to the character. That's what gives him that really just no love, no compassion, ready to fucking kill. Kind of creature.
No, totally.
And from that, we should probably just talk about the effects work.
Yeah,
and how good it is.
The effects work in this film is astounding.
This is the best looking Godzilla film. I absolutely. This is beautifully shot.
Yeah,
it looks so good. They film on location, so quite a little bit. There's a scene on the rooftops where Goromaki and Naoko are talking, and just I don't know exactly where they are, but they have above them just lit up skyscrapers above them, and even that looks fantastic. And that's not effects work, that's just the film looking good. But going back to the Godzilla fight and back to the effects work.
Well, just quickly, what I was going to say is I think that's definitely a good thing, because while, maybe it would have been nice to see Yoshiro Honda take a crack at this, and maybe it would have been nice to hear some Ifukube music, it's ultimately, though, I think it's better to have some new blood in here. Like a new director who's new to the series, a new composer, just to inject a bit of new blood into it. Teruyushi Nakano directed the special effects, and he was Eiji Tsuburai's protege, and he directed the effects on Terror of Mechagodzilla and the other late 70s movies, and he was a master of explosions, specifically. He loved to blow shit up. He's like Crazy Harry from The Muppet Show. And I think his best sequence in this movie is the one I mentioned there, where the military are attacking Godzilla at Tokyo Bay.
That's so good.
Because it is just a visual onslaught. There's so much practical effects work going on there, and that must have been a nightmare to choreograph. But he pulls it off, and Godzilla himself looks great. Obviously, because they made Godzilla bigger, they have to make the miniatures smaller to give that illusion, and obviously making your miniatures smaller creates a need for a lack of detail, or it necessitates it, unfortunately, but you don't notice it because it looks so good, and it's all so well shot. Godzilla's very often, as he was in the original movie, shot from low angles
or far away,
which makes him look all the more menacing. And there's that beautiful shot where he's walking through Tokyo, and his entire reflection is just seen in a building. We see him just walking past it, and it's so good.
There's another, when the kind of homeless guy that's been you see throughout the movie, and I will talk about that because I love that later on. But he looks up, and you get a from the ground, straight up view of Godzilla, menacing, towering above this guy, and it's a fantastic shot.
And then the tramp just kind of dies, or falls asleep,
or dies. But we'll come back to the tramp. I want to go on to the Russian bomb is about to hit Tokyo. It's intercepted by a US missile. It explodes above Tokyo, and Tokyo is engulfed in red sky. There's a huge explosion, mists, deep, dark, terrifying red sky. Godzilla at this point has been blasted to shit by
this
Weapon
Super
X missiles, but around this point is when he sort of gets back up, isn't it?
He's struck by lightning, but it's the fallout. It's the radioactive fallout, and part of me is just like, And they should have just had them, like, absorb the fallout. Because we've established earlier in the movie when he attacks the power plant that he absorbs radiation.
Yeah, like, quite literally.
And nuclear power.
Eats it.
Yeah. And, like, Hayashida even uses the word absorbed. He's absorbed it all. And so I think in the sequence they should have just had Godzilla absorb the fallout from the two nuclear weapons instead of it sort of manifesting as bolts of lightning and striking him. But it works.
What are you going to do?
Yeah, because obviously the lightning is the fallout, or is a cause from the fallout.
Yeah.
But it's maybe not the best way to have done that. But
Not quite as succinct.
yeah, but either way, the outcome would be the same, that Godzilla's resurrected and kicks the shit out of the Super X.
And that's when they're firing back and forth.
Yeah,
that's
with
when the movie.
only conventional weaponry now.
Yeah, the evacuation continues. The destruction is quite severe. Well, to be fair, it's actually not that bad.
Well, you know.
A lot of buildings get destroyed and a lot of people die.
Excuse me, what about when he blows up the helicopter and that crashes? And it's
That's right.
A massive.
Oh god, you're right.
Chain reaction.
You're right. About maybe that would honestly 200, 250 cars
Probably.
on a highway just explode.
Yep.
Just right down. Yeah, I take that back. It's pretty vicious.
Yeah.
It was the train. All those people on the train, all those people on the road.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the effects work is fantastic in that scene, and it just looks beautiful. It looks dark. It looks end of the world almost. This red sky, this monster still
it
trying
is
to fight
apocalyptic
and kill.
imagery. Yeah. There's Godzilla in this movie is portrayed both via a performer in a suit and for close-ups. You might have noticed he looks a little bit different in some close-ups. He's performed by a huge animatronic.
That makes sense.
A first in the series, and it doesn't really look much like the suit.
No,
but
that's the one with the eyes. I take it with that as almost like doll's eyes kind of thing.
It's a little bit more stiff, and it's used most obviously in the cadmium missile sequences where it's being shot in his mouth, and he starts to bleed.
And his jaws
out of his mouth, and he
going
just
up and down and
collapses. But yeah, the Cybot, as it was dubbed, the Cybot was like lauded in publicity, saying we're going to use this for about 90% of the special effects, and they didn't. But it was used for a lot of publicity, and it's fucking massive. This thing's huge. It's like 30 feet or something. Maybe not that big, but it's a big fucker. And it was used for publicity well into the 90s and stuff.
Really?
And so I think it was maybe just
doing its job.
More of a
Pain.
Publicity thing.
Yeah.
But it's
well, they got their mileage out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I personally didn't notice, so it must have been fine.
Did you not notice?
Not strictly, but I don't necessarily notice these things.
That's,
Again,
yeah. You're
podcast.
You're a sleepy boy during films.
I got a bit sleepy for a couple minutes.
Yeah. That's fair. What was it you said you watched last night? License to Kill?
Oh, I watched License to Kill, and I fell asleep at the last half hour, but I woke up for the last 10 minutes. I get very sleepy. I'm bad at watching films in living rooms. The only time I can kind of competently watch a film, and be guaranteed I'm not going to fall asleep, unless I'm strictly very tired, is at the cinema.
Yeah.
I can do a living room film just fine, but see if you ask me... See if your situation is we're going to watch the film on the bed. We're going to sit in the bed and watch the movie on the TV.
Nah.
I will fall asleep.
I'm
on a bed. What do you expect me to do? I can't do that. I really can't do that. I will fall asleep. But it's my favourite thing. I try. I really do.
I expect it now because
I just get a bit sleepy. It's the mid-afternoon.
No, exactly.
I had a nice lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're comfy.
It's warm. I had a blanket. I get a bit sleepy. I drift off, and then I do that thing where your head sags. Ooh, a bit of that. But anyway, returning.
What's interesting
to
about this
Godzilla.
movie? So you mentioned earlier that I have now seen Shin Godzilla. Shin Gojira.
I'm ready to kind of transition into that.
That's
now,
fine. Well, I've got a transition here.
Perfect.
And I adored it. I honestly think it's my film of the year, and I think it's one of the most potent political movies of 2016. Because I said this on the blog, and I said it to Ross earlier when we were just having a chat. Shin Godzilla its overall theme to me is about the inefficiency of bureaucracy and the incredible amounts of time it takes government to make decisions. And I think that's incredibly potent, given that it was released in 2016, a year in which, especially in the Western world, we're seeing mass disillusionment with current systems of government and electoral systems and democracy in general, what with the messes of Brexit and the American election and the ascension of Donald fucking Trump to President of the United States.
The American bad guy of a Godzilla movie.
Yeah, like literally.
Like literally.
Yeah. He looks like a Saturday morning cartoon president.
Like an American business villain.
It looks like he belongs as in a G.I. Joe cartoon or something. As a corrupt president. But yes, I think Shin Godzilla is exceptionally important that film was released this year. And it will never be regarded as that important a movie simply by way of it being a Godzilla movie.
Yeah, exactly.
But what I was going to say is that to me, Shin Godzilla is most like the Return of Godzilla.
Really?
Certainly in tone.
That's interesting.
Shin Godzilla is like the Return of Godzilla, but all the cast are politicians.
Is it almost like how Return of Godzilla is the 30 years later of the first Godzilla?
Not a little bit, yeah.
Not in terms of it being a direct sequel, but almost like this is the table getting reset again.
It absolutely feels that way, because Shin Godzilla, like Return of Godzilla, is Godzilla only. Mm-hmm. There's no other monster in it. It's just Godzilla. But like I said, all the characters in it are bureaucrats or politicians or military personnel. There's no civilian characters.
Okay.
There's no reporters. There's no students. They're all involved in the
running in the country.
Yeah, in some capacity with a disaster at hand, and it's really, really good because it makes it play like The West Wing or the thick of it. I honestly just expect Malcolm Tucker to burst in at some point. But Shin Godzilla is most like Godzilla in Return of Godzilla in that tone, and also in this movie, a lot of characters are introduced with their name and title or rank in text on screen, and that happens in Shin Godzilla as well. But there's so much text on screen. In Shin Godzilla. Even just
it's one of my favourite things about the amount of Japanese movies I've watched. They're much more willing to put text on screen to give me information. I think more movies should just give me big long things of text on screen.
So there's definitely a lot of parallels to draw between Shin and Return of Godzilla. And Return of Godzilla and Shin Godzilla are nice because they exist. Those are the only three movies that feature only Godzilla.
Yeah.
And they're all very similar in tone, and Shin is fucking great.
Yeah, man. I'm so glad you saw it. I'm so glad you saw it pretty recently and didn't have it get spoiled or whatever.
Well,
as much as you
there's only so much I could avoid.
Well, that's it. You take these risks. You know the game.
But on that note, I don't think Ross and I are going to do a podcast on that anytime soon, because the way I see it is, obviously, not that I don't think we have many, if any, listeners in Japan right now, but certainly most of our listener base is in America, and it came out in October there, and I think the dust has settled a bit. The dust has settled a bit, and most of the other Kaiju podcasts, which are all mostly American, have gotten their 2 cents out there, and which means obviously people who are listening to podcasts have got their 2 cents. They've had their fill, and we'll get round to it.
What Steven's saying is his take is just too hot right now.
My take is you couldn't have handle my take on this film, but we'll get round to it. We'll just slot it into the end of our watch through. But I think we're going to watch it soon. But just
you won't be privy. You shan't be privy.
Just to watch it, yeah. Do you have anything else to talk about vis-a-vis Return of Godzilla?
No, and not in a bad way. In just such a strong movie for the political background, the political consequence of the Godzilla situation, which is a continuation of what I really liked in the first Godzilla, and I like when elements of that appear in other Godzilla movies. Yeah. Great effects work, some of the best. I think that was one of my favourite invasion sequences, when Godzilla enters into the city. I like the suit work. I don't have a personal objection to big Godzilla. And I really dig, first of all, when Godzilla picks up the train and peers into the train, and there's one guy sitting there that looks just fine.
He looks thrilled.
He looks thrilled and chilled, and kind of is a sort of funny throwaway. And then the brief scene we get, a man is in a restaurant, the city is evacuated, and he's just helping himself. He's sitting down, making himself a meal. You know what? I want the better whiskey, or the better cognac, or whatever he goes and gets. Fantastic, a fun scene.
Yeah, and then he's the same tramp that helps Goro and Naoko
escape
later in the movie.
Building,
yeah, that's fun.
Potentially he dies or falls asleep.
Yeah, he probably just sleeps.
Yeah, he probably just falls asleep.
Probably
too drunk, mate.
Too much cognac. But yeah, Return of Godzilla is definitely... I think it probably breaks my top 5 Godzilla movies. Yeah, I really, really like this movie. I watched it a lot when I was younger, even though, it's obviously more mature in tone. That didn't bother me when I was younger, and it's a film I've only appreciated more and more with each subsequent viewing and the older I get. And I think it absolutely was the right idea to go with a blank slate.
Yeah,
because even though
calm it all down a little bit,
even though even though it is still in canon with the original '54 movie, you absolutely do not have to have seen that movie to watch this one.
No,
do you know what I mean? It's like I don't know, Tron Legacy or the 2009 Star Trek.
Yeah,
reboot. It's great for fans and newcomers alike, and it doesn't depend on you having seen fucking 30 years of content that came before. Of course, that's the best way to revive a franchise and rekindle old fans, and to bring in new interest too.
Kind of leg of it.
And to launch a new series, which it did.
It did indeed.
So Godzilla took another wee break after this.
Right.
He returned in 1989.
Right, 4
years later. Only 2 Godzilla movies in the 80s.
Oh, really?
Yeah, only 3 Kaiju movies in the 80s.
Wow. What was the other?
1980 Gamera Super Monster, and it's an interesting film. So Godzilla would return 4 years later in 1989 with a direct sequel.
Ooh.
Which is something. Oh, get ready for this! All the films here from 84 to 95 are in tight continuity
with each other.
Yeah.
Keen.
So
I am excited.
Yeah, we're talking recurring characters.
To this one?
Yep.
To this movie here?
Yeah, the original movie, Return of Godzilla, straight through to 95.
Oh, I had this question. Is there any sort of are there fan discussions about timelines? And I know it's partially tongue-in-cheek and partially issues of canon are sometimes just vague and almost done for the benefit of your own personal enjoyment of it and building a little story in your head.
Absolutely.
But is there any sort of discussion about even especially in the Showa period of which films are in the same world together, which films that sort of share universes?
There certainly is. Yeah, it's generally regarded.
I bet it's there's the first Godzilla and then there's 7 different timelines going on.
Well, that's the thing. Thankfully, Toho has never explored a Godzilla multiverse sort of thing.
I don't need that. I don't want that, because once you actually when you make that the focus of your thing, it becomes kind of boring.
Yeah, we're just stalled.
Yeah, it's my thing.
The characters suddenly become so small.
Yeah, this is unrelated. I think movies about time travel, about the concept of time travel, are sometimes the most boring. Anyone that's seen the movie Primer, that's a boring movie.
Well, get ready for the 1991 Godzilla movie, which is all about time travel.
No, I love time travel as a plot device, but once your movie becomes about, let's talk about the physics-based structure of time travel and make it movie structurally about what.
That's what I hate. I think it was when Looper came out. There were so many articles that Looper got time travel all wrong. It's it didn't.
Time travel's fictional.
It doesn't fucking exist. You
can do whatever you want.
Have some goddamn fun.
It makes sense in this story.
Yeah, it doesn't fucking exist.
He's slashing the young guy in the past and making the old guy hurt. That makes perfect sense.
Why do you think that is the fucking problem with Looper when you had fucking Bruce Willis
hair
and his horrible Joseph Gordon-Levitt hair? Ugh, it made me feel sick.
It's awful.
Anyway,
I like Looper though.
Looper's great. I should probably watch it again. The director of that's doing Star Wars 8, isn't he? Yeah,
Ryan Johnson.
Yeah, cool.
He did Brick, which I really like.
I never saw Brick. I've only seen Looper.
some of the, I know you're not like whatever, you're kind of whatever on Breaking Bad, but some of the most highly rated episodes of Breaking Bad, and indeed
Breaking
some
Bad.
of the highest rated episodes of television in the West, indeed. Were directed by Ryan Johnson. They're great episodes.
Ryan Johnson, Breaking Bad, Bryan Cranston, Godzilla 2014, Godzilla, Return of Godzilla, here we are. We're back at it.
I know, we're back at it.
And so, yeah, the Godzilla movies from 1984 to 1995 share a tight continuity. Well, it's tight, but, kind of tight, yeah.
Continuity enough.
They're direct sequels to each other.
I am
and they reference each other, and there's recurring characters, and so it's the original film, 84, and straight through to 95.
Great.
All tight together. The next movie is Godzilla versus Biollante.
Ooh, Biollante.
Biollante.
I want to meet this character. That's really interesting.
And
that is a good fish hook. I love continuity.
well, here's another little fish hook I'm going to dangle for you. I recently was talking to some of my Kaiju friends from G-Fest, and I said that the way I see these two movies, Return of Godzilla and Godzilla vs. Biollante, is that, speaking in terms of, let's talk about it in terms of John Carpenter movies. The Return of Godzilla is The Thing. Godzilla vs. Biollante is Big Trouble in Little China.
Cool.
So
I haven't seen Big Trouble in Little China.
well,
but I
you
get
fucking should.
I know, man. I should.
Oh, so that what you're saying is what I just said to you means nothing to you.
No, it doesn't. I can imagine what it might mean. I think I have an idea of what it means. And maybe I'll see that movie before I watch Biollante, and I can
Maybe
tell
you
you.
will.
But...
Let's watch it now.
Okay,
we're going to go watch Big Trouble in Little China. I've got the Blu-ray from Arrow Video,
That's
so
cool,
it's a good one. Kurt Russell, would love to see Kurt Russell.
So,
in a Godzilla
what
film.
do people think of this movie?
Pretty highly rated. Well, not like it. Well, it's
Like you?
largely unseen.
Yeah, well,
like
I said
earlier,
but
yeah.
people that have seen it.
Well, people who are not afraid to acquire it by means love it. It's pretty highly rated. Yeah. People by and large, people don't really rate the American version, but I think it's a fun alternate version. Like I'm all about alternate movies of alternate versions of movies, I should say. Sorry, because there's a particularly kind of snobbish attitude in the Godzilla fandom sometimes that I only watch these movies in Japanese as they were intended.
Subs, not dubs.
Yeah, well, exactly. And man, dubs are fun. Alternate versions of movies are fun as long as they work on the principle of alternative, not replacement.
Yeah, exactly. I understand the sort of heartbreak and disappointment when that's all that's available to you, and that's what people. I saw the new Godzilla, but it turns out you only saw a weird version of it.
Yeah. For example, the big example there is obviously the Star Wars special editions. Those absolutely work on the principle of replacement.
Yeah,
and
the goal is
erasing the original versions.
When they bring out a new one, they make it harder to get.
Yeah, exactly.
Unadulterated or even less adulterated copy of.
Whereas, I'm fucking all about alternate edits and versions of movies,
totally.
as long as they're alternatives, not replacements. So I enjoy 85. I think it's fun, and Raymond Burr gives a really fucking serious performance.
That's almost like a nice little redemptive
it's
arc for the alternative cut, the English cut, is to get to 30 years later bring on the same actor and have at least an attempt to keep the tone.
Raymond Burr's redemption arc.
Yeah, no, truly.
Well, apparently they briefly considered getting Leslie Nielsen to do it.
Mate.
Which, despite myself, I'm kind of like, oh, I kind of wish I'd seen that.
Absolutely.
Don't get me wrong, I think it would have been a horrible, insensitive, probably weirdly semi-racist
attempt.
Much like Woody Allen's movie What's Up, Tiger Lily. That movie, that fucking thing is horrendously racist. But
the thing actually on the Leslie Nielsen thing, I was on TCM or some shit, and I saw a movie with Leslie Nielsen in it as Leslie Nielsen, kind of fairly well-known actor before Naked Gun, and I just couldn't. It's hard to watch.
Was it Forbidden Planet?
No, it was a some sort of dramatic movie.
All right, okay.
I know he doesn't. I know he didn't mind, because he loved doing those movies and he loved doing the comedy later on in his career. But man, you can't actually watch him in a serious role. It's genuinely impossible. You just think he's gonna crack a joke. Everything he does is funny,
and it's funny because he's in most of his comedies. He's a straight character. He's.
No, it means he's playing a straight man in those movies. It just means that
it's Enrico Palazzo.
You can't tell if he's being serious or not.
So I despite myself, I kind of would have liked to seen Leslie Nielsen edited into the Return of Godzilla.
Yeah, I'd be standing to see Leslie Nielsen kind of edited into anything.
It's funny
so.
because in the original edit of Godzilla 54, Godzilla King of the Monsters, Raymond Burr's character was called Steve Martin. And obviously by this point in the mid-80s, Steve Martin's at the fucking height of his fame. So in the movie they either just refer to him as Steve Martin or Mr. Martin. they never call him Steve Martin. Yeah,
that's so funny.
Which is great.
They just named him Martin Steve.
I saw someone suggest, I think it was maybe my friend Alex suggested that they should do an edit of Shin Godzilla and edit Kyle MacLachlan to.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Which would be great.
That would be great fun.
But anyway, I think we're done.
We're wrapping up here.
Nice and wrapped
What's
up.
the worst opinion you've seen about this movie? Has there ever been you've just seen someone spout absolute fucking bullshit about this? If not, you can just remove this long.
People are assholes about everything.
Yeah.
Especially a lot of people in the.
I don't like
Godzilla
the way the shoes look in this scene. It's really distracting. I feel like more care could have gone into the gloves in this film.
There's people who like. Godzilla 1985 is unlikely to resurface because of rights issues regarding music used in it, etc. There's people who are like, I'm fine for it to become a lost film. It's like, shut up, come on. It's probably the way you first saw the movie, you fucking asshole. Shut up.
Yeah. Shut up.
Just
shut up.
Yeah, just shut your fucking hole. This has been the Kaijusaurus Podcast. You can find us at home on SoundCloud, Kaijusaurus Podcast. We're on iTunes. Please do subscribe or give us a rating or a review there. We've still not got an average rating there, so
get rating.
We're on Facebook, Tumblr, etc. Links to all our social media in the show notes as always. I have been Steven Sloss.
And I have been Roz Menzies.
Join us soon. Probably
in the new year.
Probably in 2017 for Godzilla.
Well, we'll see you next year.
Biollante.
We're all going to be there. We're going to jump into 2017 together. We're going to do this.
Ooh-wee.
We'll be with you. Ooh-wee. I really like this one. I really like that film. I just can't stress like how wholesome and good that film was.
Yeah.
I hope you all have a nice holiday and a pleasant new year.
Yeah.
And we'll see you again in 2017.